Good afternoon. I'm Dara Bunjon. I'm the food enthusiast here at J More Living. I'm a food writer, food stylist, PR maven, and a frustrated baker. Those of you joining us live, drop your comments and questions for my guest or myself into the comment box, and I will check from time to time. You'll see me turn my head to check. This week's guest is Jessie-Sierra Ross, a food and lifestyle blogger, television food personality, and the imagination behind the blog. Straight to the hips, baby. Scratch cooking and hands-on approach to party planning, Jessie-Sierra's new book, Seasons Around the Table. Effortless entertaining with floral tablescapes and seasonal recipes is a must. The book hits the shelves October 29th. You can pre-order on Amazon. There'll be links coming up um, to Jessie and to her website, which is, guess what? Straight to the hips, baby. Let's bring in Jessie. There she is, a beautiful smile. How are you doing today?
I am doing wonderfully, especially now that I'm sitting here with you and a good cup of coffee. I'm ready to kibitz and talk more about food and life and home entertaining.
Well, we're all set for that. So, my typical question when I start the show is what's on your plate today other than doing the show?
Well, it's recipe testing because one never sleeps when you're a food creator, and creating a new concept for a table scape that I have on deck, and then spending some time with my kiddos outside. I live in the Berkshires and it's peak autumn weather right now. It's glorious outside. It's warm, the trees are changing, and it's time to enjoy before the hard winter comes in.
You have all the harvest colors. I saw um, you had a shot video. In the background was the windows. Maybe in your kitchen, you could see all the autumn colors, the orange, the
Mhm.
gold, the avocado green. This goes back a number of years, but which, if any of us grew up, you remember that theme before we went into the pink and the green. Um, so, growing up, home life, I always check with people where did food and flowers fit in growing up for you?
They were food and flowers were family. Food and flowers were love. I grew up in a Jewish family where my mother was a passionate cook, and I remember being by her side, maybe 5 years old, baking cookies and making challah. And her way of showing love was to feed us. And my father, who was a Ukrainian refugee and immigrant, food was also love, but it was also powerful. It was a way to connect to his family, but it was also a way to celebrate the safety of being in America after such a traumatizing time during World War II. So for me, it's equal balance. It's about home, it's about love, security, and when I started cooking and baking and making these food experiences for my family, I took those elements and elaborated on it with my passion for flowers that I inherited from my grandmother, who had a postage size stamp garden back in New Jersey that she grew fruit trees and raspberries and roses and a veggie patch and great, like everything her Ukrainian heart could desire was in that garden. And it impacted me from a young age. And I've incorporated those floral aspects, those natural elements that we find, the beauty of it, into my home entertaining and my food.
Right. Well, I like to quote, which you pretty much restated in a different way, but you said, food was the most basic form of love in my house, in mine as well. It's sitting
Mm.
around the table and sharing experiences. Um, Children, tell me about your, you have children. One was bas mitzvah, bar mitzvah. What, fill me in.
I ha I have 3 boys. I have a 14-year-old, a 12-year-old, and an 8-year-old. They keep me busy. My eldest was bar mitzvahed last year, both in the States and at the Kotel in Israel before, the war began. It was, an experience of a lifetime. I'm preparing with my middle son now. He's learning his Torah portion. And my youngest son is just kind of looking at everybody with wide eyes and like, oh, my turn's coming up soon. But yeah, I have three boys, and I I had always cooked beforehand, but suddenly when I had children, it became an outlet for me because I had two boys very close together. I had moved to Western Massachusetts from the city of Boston. I'm a city girl, a Bostonian, and I found myself with a lot of time and a lot of children and a lot of baby babble. And I said, I need to do something. I've always had a project. I've always had a career. I began my professional ballet career at age 14, if you can believe it. So it was the first time I had ever slowed down. And I realized very, very quickly that not only was cooking a passion of mine, but feeding people was a passion of mine, and creating holiday meals that were experiences that were memorable, and figuring it out along the way because the dinner parties that I had in my memory from my mother, and also my mother-in-law is a fantastic cook and home entertainer. She does parties for 16 and more on a regular basis, never mind Passover and the high holidays. I realized like I can do this, but maybe not quite in the same way. I need something that's more efficient, something more modern, because I have three children and I'm busy, and the people around me are also extremely busy. How can I make a philosophy, make these parties so that I can enjoy the party just as much as my guests? And that's how the concept of the book was really starting to percolate and form all those years ago.
Right. Um, what I just discovered today, unfortunately, because the book is not physically out until the 29th, I just have a PDF, so I can't pick up the book. Maybe you have a copy near you? You're so good. There we go, everybody. Beautiful photography, just gorgeous. And let me say that her husband was the photographer. Was that his full-time profession?
No, it's funny. So he is a physician by day, a photographer, and an amazing father by night. And we started our blog, Straight to the Hips Baby, several years ago, and I had started doing the photography myself, but quickly realized when I had him step in for a shot while I was like holding something, I said, "Honey, can you take a snap?" He's much better at it than I am. I'm much better at cooking. So, and styling. So this project, he took all the photographs, he edited all the photographs while I styled and created each scene, wrote each recipe, and stored, like wove the story in the book. And it's been a wonderful team project. It's something that I will always hold very near to my heart. And I gotta tell you, he's probably the person that I work best with, because he understands what I want and he can translate it into that very specific style of photography that we have, which is light and bright with a lot of lush floral aspects. And it's this dreamy sort of fairy tale feel. It's almost like you've stepped into a dream. And the way that I style my food as well, using a lot of flowers and the angles I use, I want the viewer, the reader, or someone who's watching me on TV, or even listening right now, I want them to feel like they're sitting down to that meal at that table. So there's a very specific way that we shoot, and
Right?
it's become really iconic.
You had such a wonderful following on Straight to the Hips Baby, but I guess COVID came, the book came, and I saw that you're regenerating that. But you are on every social media that's out there. I know we'll be putting up links to Facebook and to Instagram, um, but you're also doing. Why can't I think of the name of the thing? Um, People can go to the website and follow your newsletter. Um,
Yes.
why Substack? Sorry. Yes. Sorry, things come and
No,
go with
no.
me. So most authors are charging for their Substack. Substack, you and the links I'm sure is on the website. You can sign up and get the free newsletter on what you're doing and what's going on in food. Now, being in the Berkshires, the it's awakening up to farm to table. It is awakening up to cooking scratch, and these are things that are generated throughout your book. and seasons around the table. And um, tell us more about the book. How many recipes, what is featured, what people expect to find in the book.
Absolutely. So you touched upon it really well. It's that element of farm to table. When we moved from the city of Boston, which, when you go to the grocery store in the city of Boston, it's things on a shelf. Maybe there's a farmer's market, but we moved out to the Berkshire, which is farm country. And suddenly I can go to a farm stand. I can talk to the farmer about his growing practices. I can ask, the strawberry dealer or the sour cherry orchard, the farm stand that sells them, like, when are they coming in? I know them. And I also know their growing practices. So it creates a new level of understanding my ingredients. And I wanted that to come into play very heavily in the book as it has on my blog. So the book itself is very seasonally driven, to the point that the book is divided into 4 seasons: spring, summer, fall, and winter. And for
Right.
each season, there are 4 menus with at least 4 to 5 recipes per menu. Now, I focus a lot on holiday menus or event menus. I'll take in particular the spring season. We have a dinner that could be used for Passover or for Easter. We have a baby shower menu. We have a strawberry season brunch. We also have a Mother's Day brunch. And within each one of those themes, there is a bespoke tablescape that goes along with it. And I show you step by step how to create a table scene that invites people to your table, that reflects the season with colors and textures and the seasonal flowers that are available. And I try to encourage people to use the book as a guide, not only in the tablescapes, the menus, and the recipes, but also I share my modern home entertaining tips for streamlining the amount of time that you're in the kitchen, what you're going to serve, how you'll welcome your guests to set the mood, oftentimes with a cocktail, and really choose to use the book as a party planner in your back pocket.
I there was so much that interests me, and I think what people uh, can find is there's so much that you can find at yard sales, flea markets, and pick up. Now, I will tell my story. I have probably about 9 sets of fine china, Staffordshire, mitten, came down from relatives, my husband at flea markets. I have the gold with a peacock in the center. So I have fun when I do dinner. I haven't been invited to maybe Thanksgiving to a real dinner party where you sit down where the table's set in eons, but that's my joy to do that. Now, one of the little things that I do, now I was told, and you can answer this question, that the centerpiece should be low because you want the guests to be able to see over it. I go to Trader Joe's, and a lot of times they have little plants, and I put them
Mhm.
on the table. And when the women leave, I give them the plants to go home with them. So it's in a little
Love
pot.
that.
So that's just my thing. It's not as gorgeous as what you do, but I'm using the china, the silver I got rid of. But there's so much to be found at flea market, yard sales. Just that one piece that something's different. Or um, I saw on one of your tablescapes you had one of those 3-tier wire baskets. I
Mhm.
have something like that in that hammered club aluminum, which they did like in the 50s. So hit it, people. That's you only need 1 or 2 pieces to really spark it up. Trader Joe's, if you have one near you, you can't beat the flowers. They're behind me right now. Um, there's a certain rule of 3 that you talk about. Maybe you can explain that a little bit more.
Absolutely. And touching upon your Trader Joe's, that's my favorite place to go for flowers as well. And vintage china and heirloom china. I use my great grandmother's china. I use my husband's aunt's china. I like to say, especially if we're using sets that perhaps the family members are no longer with us, it's like bringing my great grandmother Rodman to the table because I'm using
Right.
her elements. I'm using her compote bowl for a floral display. But yeah, so the rule of three. There tends to be also three rules to table scapes, generally speaking, which is color, texture, and light. And we want to bring a lot of color to our table that's reflective of the season. We want to add texture to sort of highlight those floral choices and our dishware patterns. And then light for me is always candlelight. It's just a question of whether it's small votives or tall pillars. But the rule of three is actually an interior design philosophy that I came upon several years ago, probably back in college when I was setting up my first apartment. And the gist of it is that the human brain is hardwired to find odd numbers of items more attractive than even numbers. So groups of three and five are ideal. And when I started creating these table scapes, I realized that if I followed that same rule, perhaps three candlesticks with beeswax pillars, or three little jam jars of flowers, or a mix of jam jars with ornamental pumpkins, because we are in the autumn season right now, it's very, very attractive, it's very elegant, and it also helps us from overwhelming the table. It stops us because you're creating space between those 3 and 5 groupings for the eye to rest, and that negative space, just like in food plating, our eyes need a place to rest to really enjoy and understand the scene that's in front of us. So I use that philosophy in all of my table designs. So you will find pieces of art that perhaps some milkware, ornamental stands, or we have lovely little ornaments that I collect that are made out of crystal that I don't have a Christmas tree, but I can certainly cut the string off and use it on my table as a decoration, and using those 3 and 5 groupings.
You know what I got thank God for Facebook Marketplace. When I was moving, I could sell stuff, and I found stuff, this beautiful red bowl. And I just at Christmas time, I just take the Christmas bulbs and put them in there.
Mhm.
That's on the table all the time. And I have a penchant for fresh flowers, so no longer have a garden, but there's always a certain place in my house that there are fresh flowers. Makes me feel good, and I'll snip some and put
Mhm.
them in the powder room. On your book, Seasons Around the Table, Effortless, entertaining with a floral tablescapes and seasonal recipes. That's a lot to say, but I'm saying it. Okay. Um, that you have a special little index for those people who might need specialty diets, gluten-free, vegan, or high protein. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. So I have many very dear friends and family who have special dietary requirements or preferences. And we live in a day and age where we should not only accommodate, but we should celebrate those differences. And in my mind, if I have, like, one of my best friends is vegan, so that means no animal products of any sort, I still want her to be able to come over and enjoy the menu I prepared. So I have to go through my dishes and figure out what can be substituted for ingredients, or maybe I make an original menu from that list. And that's what's interesting about Seasons Around the Table, is that every season, with those four distinct menus, they all use seasonal ingredients. So if you have someone who is perhaps gluten free, you can go through each menu and find those gluten free recipes and stack them to create your own menu. Maybe someone keeps kosher, they're very strictly kosher, no meat or milk during that meal. You can go through and find what you need. And I wanted to make it very easy, very approachable, and making sure that I didn't sacrifice the flavor for anyone involved. Because when you're gathering around the table, you want to celebrate your friends over good food and drink. And it shouldn't be an issue, really, ideally, if there's dietary restrictions. It shouldn't impact that. It should still be a celebration.
Well, more power to you on that. I do the same meal and entertain. I just rotate the guests,
Mm.
but it's a prime rib dinner. So I go,
Can I
"Would
come
you
to
like
your
to come?"
house?
Yeah. I go, "Would you like to come for a prime rib dinner?" And, if they don't eat meat, they can say no, or they'll come and they'll eat the other things. But I think it's nice that your book teaches how to accommodate multiple guests. I'm
Mhm.
probably not as generous, but yeah, I'll let you know.
I'll be there.
Yeah, it's pretty much I changed the soup, I changed the dessert and the main course, and then there's stuff on the cocktail table. So all that is done seasonally. So the winter I might go with a ribollita. It's heavier
Mm.
in the cold winter as opposed to an Asian noodle dish.
Mhm.
Um, so let's see, we have 100 recipes. Um, the book comes out the 29th. I like that you have a nosh party for Hanukkah in the book, but there are many in there for all holidays. And you know, it's fun having people are not going to restaurants anymore. They really aren't. It's, forgive me, I'm losing my earpiece here. The New York Times wrote, why chefs are leaving restaurants. Well, we're leaving restaurants. Things have gone up. And no, I can't afford, I'm not going out to dinner the way I used to. I would rather take what I would spend on the meal and have people over.
Mhm.
So, but that's just me personally. Um, let's see, is there any other tidbit that we should talk about on the book? And then we'll go on to my regular questions. Have I missed anything?
I think a really interesting part of this book is that it's a cross section of interests. So we have obviously the food and cooking with our recipes and our menus. We have the table scape, which is sort of lifestyle and interior design and that sort of fun craftiness. But we also have the garden. And there's a heavy gardening influence in this book, not only by incorporating flowers both in the food and on the table, but also I provide growing lists of easy to grow flowers and herbs at home, edible flowers, food safe flowers, because there is a distinction. Oftentimes we'll see people unintentionally or unknowingly add baby's breath to a cake or a cocktail. Don't do that. It's poisonous. So it's having that information at your fingertips and
Right.
really bringing in people from different interests and realizing that we all have this commonality of growing and creating and making things beautiful. So I think that's a heavy sort of influence in there is that garden and nature element.
Well, I think even with your husband being a doctor, I used to find, he does photography. We all look for sort of that artistic outlet. I
Mhm.
used to run cooking classes in restaurants, and I would find nurses and doctors took the classes, and they were more into the baking because they liked the
Mhm.
science of it. Just a little tidbit. It has nothing to do with your book. It's just my
Well,
little
no,
tidbit.
it's very true. My husband, he doesn't like baking, he likes to be free. He tells me he's the cook. I like baking because it's in this world where I was a professional ballerina for many years before turning to food and cooking, that control and that repetition I find very soothing. So baking to me, the chemistry, that's very, very soothing, especially as the mother of 3 rambunctious boys who are swinging from the chandeliers half the time. I like to go sit down with my with my butter and my sugar and make a nice cake.
It's okay. Well, you heard my opening is always a frustrated baker. I can bake, but there are just some times that I go, what? I baked this 3 times. Why it not working this time? But I've gotten better. I look at things where I'm a little bit different is I'll try a new dessert that I've never made for a dinner party. That's just me. Some people, if push comes to shove, you go get a cheesecake somewhere. You get it straightened out, ahead of time.
Mhm.
But that's me. All right. So, Jessie, Sierra,
Mhm.
Ross, um, if you could go back and give your 18-year-old self a piece of advice, what would it be?
You know, I was thinking about my young self and how my life has been an adventure. It's been a wild and amazing and completely unexpected adventure. I never thought as a ballet dancer that I would ever become a food personality, a cookbook author, someone who works daily with food because it's not an automatic fit, right?
Right.
Um, I I would say that to my 18-year-old self, stay true to who you are and your talents, understand your talents, and then use them in different ways than you thought. So, my years on stage, my years being completely surrounded by the arts, music, amazing artists of the ballet, really informed my critical eye, when I recipe test so that I have recipes that are repeatable. You mentioned earlier how, sometimes a recipe will suddenly fail. I don't want that for my people. So for me, just like spending hours at the bar perfecting, a port de bras, and you're doing the same movement for 15 years, but you're doing it differently and refining it each time. That's how I am with recipes. To looking at tablescapes as a stage, I am setting the stage. I am creating the scenery, the decor, the feeling, the mood, perhaps the music and the light. All of those aspects that I had at 18, I would tell my 18-year-old self, keep going, keep flowering, keep learning because it
Right.
will continue forward with you.
All right. What's the best bite you've had all week?
Ooh. I actually made, I had a couple TV segments this week, and I made a recipe from the book. It's the pear and manchego cheese puff pastry tarts. They are sweet, they're savory, they're topped with this thyme-infused honey. It's divine, and it takes like 10 minutes to make. That was definitely the best bite. I had it for breakfast the next morning with some tea. Um, yeah, that was the
So,
best bite.
sounds yummy. Two musts that you have to have in your refrigerator.
Coffee creamer. And, in my fridge, probably kombucha.
Okay.
I'm a kombucha girl.
Okay. Looking at you, I would have never guessed, but now that you say it, I understand.
I'm a little crunchy granola, don't let the
Right. What was your ultimate culinary fail? And I know you've only had one, so why don't you tell me about it?
I've had many, especially when you're learning, and I will tell you that my Mount Everest was, macarons. About 5 years into my cooking journey, I saw a recipe and probably a foodie magazine, and they looked, those little French cookies made out of almond meal and egg whites, and they're just delicate and amazing. I'd had them. I was like, I can do that. I've been doing this long enough. I can make it.
Right.
I tried it, failed. Tried it again, failed. Tried it again, failed. I swear, for 2 weeks straight, every time after I put the kids to bed, they were babies then, I would set out for 3 hours in the evening because I would not let macarons get the better of me every time. Every single time I failed until I figured out that the Italian method for macaron is way easier. So, macarons were my Mount Everest for a long, long time. Once I did it several times perfectly, I put it away and I haven't touched them since, but it was a personal endeavor. I
I
needed to
understand
plant
that.
my flag on that.
Yeah, because you with macarons, the humidity, just anything can set it off.
Anything, anything.
Anything. All right. So, best buy things in the fridge, culinary fail. If you wake up tomorrow morning with a new talent, what would it be?
Mm. I would love to be able to play an instrument. My sons are all musically talented. My eldest, has taught himself acoustic and electric guitar. My middle son is a saxophone player, and my youngest is a budding drummer. I would love to be able to accompany them. So
Well,
playing guitar or piano.
you know what? It sounds like you have the start of the Partridge Family.
Be the Ross family band.
Right, right. Yeah. Is your husband musical?
He is. He very much is, and he played piano for quite a long time. And but I like to say, being a dancer, I use my body as an instrument. I kind of danced on top of the music.
Right. Well, I just want to remind people before we wrap this up. This is Jessie-Sierra Ross. The new cookbook is Seasons Around the Table. Effortless entertaining with floral tablescapes and seasonal recipes hitting the shelves October 29th, but you can order it on Amazon right now. And to learn more about her, go to the website straight-to-the-hips-baby.com, and every link to Instagram, to everything, and to her Substack or free Substack newsletter. And on the website, there are recipes there. My final question, I sort of asked it before, but let's just make sure. What didn't I ask you that I probably should have?
Favorite recipe to serve a crowd?
Gee, Jessie-Sierra, what is your favorite recipe to serve a crowd? I'm a mind reader, aren't
Well,
I?
for me, going back to the very top of our conversation, food is love. I love home style cooking that is full flavored, full fat, full sugared, everything that's beautiful about food. And for me, it's a chicken paprikash, which is a simmered chicken in a paprika flavored sauce that you can serve over egg noodles or potatoes. And it speaks to my Slavic soul. It speaks to the mother in me that wants to feed everyone, but it also brings me back to my family and the warmth, the embrace of food is love. And if I can give that to my friends, my family, my sons, I'm a happy lady.
Well, I think you're doing a great job. I think there's more to come for you. And you're growing. So now it's additional people to help you out because I know that I can't keep up with AI anymore and some of the social media. So there's a point where you have to bring others in that are better at it
Mhm.
than you. And I want to thank you. Continued success. And I'm going to look for the chicken paprikash because that sounds good and find that recipe. That sounds like a good fall dish. Thank you so much, Jessie-Sierra. Much luck, continued success. Have the best of the holiday season. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. It was such a pleasure.
Okay, everyone. Next week's guest will be live from France. The guest is Susan Herman Loomis, and an award winning writer, journalist, professional trained chef, cooking school owner, and teacher, and an expert in the history of French gastronomy. Susan is a best selling author of 14 books about food, including the very well known En Route Tatin. Always feel free to reach out to me via my email, which is food@jmoreliving.com, or on Instagram at Dara Cooks. And on Facebook, I do have a food enthusiast page. You can find me there. Just a reminder, you can sign up at jmoreliving.com for their free This Week in Baltimore Eating newsletter. Go to the website, jmoreliving.com. On the menu tab, click on Connect on the website menu and sign up. And every Tuesday, this newsletter comes out with recipes and what's going on in food here in Baltimore. All our shows are immediately archived in video form on Jmore Living's Facebook page and jmoreliving.com. We truly appreciate it when you share our show with friends and family. Feel free to go back into our archives and enjoy past shows. May your plates always, always remain full. I hope to see you next Thursday. Have a good week. Thank you.